Hello, and welcome to the OrasiLabs webinar, where we will discuss how OrasiLabs can accelerate the delivery of your software application training. My name is Karen Spencer, and I have Joe Schultz also joining me today. I'm going to kick us off with a brief introduction to OrasiLabs, as well as a high-level overview of how it benefits training and consulting providers. Then we will move into a demo where Joe will demonstrate how OrasiLabs can improve the effectiveness and efficiency of your software application training. Now, when it comes to delivering software application training, an important component of that training is allowing learners to practice the concepts being taught. Typically, when you're delivering software application training, you teach them something, you show them something, and then you ask them to do something. So they really need a realistic yet risk-free environment where they can get their hands on the keyboard to explore and try out different scenarios. Yet providing these environments in a way that is convenient for students and not time-consuming for instructors can be a challenge. So with OrasiLabs, you can create inexpensive hands-on training environments in the cloud. Now, these environments can be as simple as a browser or can be a multi-server environment, and it really just depends on what type of application you're teaching. OrasiLabs then quickly spins up personalized copies for each student in each class. And students only need a browser and an internet connection to access their own dedicated training environment. And each lab is set up with exactly what the student needs for hands-on participation. OrasiLabs can be used for any type of training, including on-site or virtual instructor-led classes, virtual on-demand classes, hands-on workshop, and even large group seminars. And in all cases, students can quickly and easily use their OrasiLabs environment to practice the skills being taught. Now let's drill down into some of the specific benefits for training providers. OrasiLabs leverages the AWS cloud, which makes it an extremely cost-effective way to reach more students and therefore drive additional revenue from your training offerings. Since students only need a browser and internet connection, it doesn't really matter at all where those students are located. Now, even though moving your training environments to the cloud can be very cost-effective, cloud providers can also be quite complex and overwhelming. So if you've ever tried to go out to a cloud provider, quickly set up an environment, it can be quite complex. But we remove that complexity with an interface built specifically for training organizations, and you'll see how that works in Joe's demo. I mentioned earlier, it can be difficult to provide a consistent, reliable, hands-on environment to students, and that's especially true in a virtual setting. But OrasiLabs will save you time with a drag and drop interface to create what's called a lab template, and then you reuse that template across classes. Now, since every student environment is exactly the same, instructors will not waste valuable class time troubleshooting environments that the student sets up themselves. I think most instructors, Joe, I'm sure you've seen this, is most instructors, have some type of horror story where they've asked students to install and configure some things before class. Students show up, it's not done, and it's all possible to do during class, but of course you spend that valuable class time doing that setup. So OrasiLabs can save time before the class with environments set up, but also during the class with those consistent environments. Now, while students are working in those hands-on environments, completing exercises or assignments, instructors can see exactly what the student is doing and can easily monitor student progress. We know that your training demand can vary sometimes and vary based on many factors. So with OrasiLabs, you only pay for what you use. It makes it really easy to scale up or down depending on your needs. So how does OrasiLabs work? Now, Joe's going to show how this works also in the demo, but just to get us started, it really starts with what's called a template. Now, a template is used to create that hands-on environment for both students and instructors. A template is going to consist of one or more virtual resources, so it could be virtual machines, databases, ports, again, just depending on what your software requires. Template is also where you're going to install and configure any software that your students will need to complete the class. Once that template is set up, you can then create the class, and each class uses a template to define that hands-on environment. OrasiLabs is going to take care of starting and stopping those environments for instructors and students. Each class also has a roster of students authorized to access the class. It specifies who's authorized to access one of those environments. As an instructor, when I'm ready to begin teaching, I simply start the class so those students can log in. Now, as an instructor, I can have my own lab also for any instructional activity like presentations, demos. I can broadcast that image so that students can see and watch what I'm doing. And then when it's time for students to do their own work, they open their dedicated lab for their hands-on practice. And they're interacting with that cloud resource just as if it was installed locally. And remember, since that environment was created based on that template, it has everything set up to perfectly match those course materials. And as the students work on those labs, the instructor can watch what the students are doing with the OrasiLabs over-the-shoulder view, which lets me as an instructor get live view into what those students are doing, and I can monitor their progress. Now, that is a quick overview of what OrasiLabs is and how it works. And now, Joe, I'll turn it over to you for the demo.
Well, Karen, for the OrasiLabs experience, it all starts for a student with an invitation. So I've got here in front of me an invitation from OrasiLabs to Marie Curie, our student, a very august student base we have. And Marie's been invited to a class called Introduction to Acrobat Reader. And so she's gets information about the class in the email, as well as an attachment that lets her add it to her calendar directly. She can do things like check her connection ahead of time, etc. But the whole point is that when she's ready to join the class, all Marie has to do is literally click the big blue button inside the email, and it'll drop her into the class directly. So I just click join class, and I'm now logged into this electronic classroom as Marie Curie. The class is being taught by myself, Joe Schultz, and Marie then wants to see what I'm doing, right? She wants to see what's going on in the class. She wants to be able to watch my screen and talk to me. So all Marie has to do is join the conference, and then she's part of our audio-visual experience here within the classroom. So now Marie's, in 2 clicks, first from the email and now inside of here, she's quickly into the classroom and she's watching me demonstrate the software. So I, as an instructor now, would be bringing up the software and explaining the menu options and, going through things like that. We all have a public audio channel, so Marie could ask questions. If she had questions, she could just shout them out and I could answer them just like I would in a classroom. We also have a dedicated chat channel. So Marie could ask questions of me or the entire class. And put that right inside the inside the chat. So, that's kind of how the instructional portion of it works from the student's perspective. They literally just a couple of clicks, they're in the classroom. They can watch me and participate with the rest of the students in the classroom. Now, the important part, though, the hard part about training is, getting hands-on experience. You want your students to have access to the software, and you want them to actually practice so that they get that kind of muscle memory to learn the product. And so at this point, I would probably tell Marie, okay, now it's your time. It's your turn. Now you guys go out and do this exercise. So Marie's going to probably want to see what I was doing and follow along. So we have this feature called Picture in a Picture. I'm not sure if everybody in the world is as old as I am and remembers the VCRs with picture in picture, but the idea is that it puts the broadcast from the instructor into a little movable, resizable overlay window that Marie can leave in the foreground while she's working on her lab. So she quickly puts me in the picture in picture window, and now she can open her lab. And she has an identical copy of the same software, same environment that she can then practice on her own. So for example, I'm going to expand Marie's lab, and then Marie would follow along with whatever I told her. So you can imagine in the foreground, I would be clicking through options and she would be following along by clicking the class files, for example, to see the materials. She would then, open up one of the sample data sheets and start working through whatever it was that I wanted her to do in this interface. So that's kind of the idea, is that Marie has a working copy of the software that she can manipulate, a sandbox, I often refer to it as. And she can then follow along with me in the foreground window in this little picture-in-picture view. So it makes it very simple for students to join the class quickly, a couple of clicks, and then just a couple more clicks, and they're using the software live. And so, like, as you said, Karen, it avoids all that overhead where I, as an instructor, would have had to come in and set up machines the day before, or I would have had to email, Marie a bunch of download links to have her set up the right version and download sample files. And of course, students never do that, right? And
That's
so,
right, Joe.
exactly. So, we always lose half an hour of training time because I have to help the students set up. So the whole point is, sets this all environment up automatically, and Marie can join it very quickly. So now, you can imagine Marie's working around. Imagine that Marie has a question, right? So Marie gets stuck, doesn't know what to do next. So at this point, she's got a number of different ways to do this, but she can ask for help. So she could use that chat facility we were talking about a minute ago. Oops, let me close this, get it out of the way so you can see the menu options. She can use this chat facility we were talking about a minute ago and ask for help from somebody, or she can just raise her hand with this request help button. And that'll actually notify me as the instructor that now Marie needs some help in her environment. So that's the student interface. It's really about all there is to it. We try to make it as simple and easy as possible for the student to join the class and to participate and engage with the instructor. So now I'm going to switch over here to the instructor interface. So, I'm Marie. I just clicked request help. The instructor got notified. And so as an instructor now, I can go see what's going on in the classroom. Now, I talked a little bit too long, so I didn't see the little pop-up that would have come up. I would have got a little pop-up in my interface that said Marie needed help. So I would want to go see what she's doing. So, this is the screen where I was sharing my screen and broadcasting. So now what I can do is click over to the student labs and actually see what the students are doing. And in this case, I can see that I've got 3 students invited to the class, Marie, as well as Albert Einstein and Isaac Newton. And I can see that Marie and Albert are both logged in. Isaac's a slacker, evidently. He must be, asleep under an apple tree somewhere. And so he's not in the class, but the other 2 are active. So now I want to see what they're doing. I want to actually see, how they're participating. So I can actually watch them either individually, or I can watch all of them at once and just put them up on the screen. So like in this example, I can see here's Marie's screen that we were just looking at, and here's Albert's screen. And I can see that, Marie, we knew, had raised her hand for help, and Albert's just cranking along doing his exercise like a good student. And again, Isaac down here, we can see that he hasn't even logged in yet. So I'd probably prompt him now or resend his invitation or something like that. I mentioned that Marie had a question, and I would have gotten notified. There's an interactive help queue in here that, as an instructor, I can see all of the students. I can manage their statuses, mute and unmute them, for example, resend them invitations if I need to. And I can see in this example that Marie has raised her hand. So now I'm going to help Marie. So I'm going to go ahead and click that help button, this dismiss this help message. That's kind of my to-do queue. If I had multiple students that had raised their hand, I'd be able to help them one at a time and keep track of which ones I've helped already. So in this example, I'm going to help Marie. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Marie's window, full sizing it. Now I'm kind of focusing on Marie's screen, and I would start helping her. I would say, probably through the audio channel or through chat, I'd be telling her, okay, Marie, go up to the left and click the edit menu and then do this or that or the other thing. And maybe my directions aren't clear, or maybe Marie's still a little confused about what to do. So if I need to, I can even unlock Marie's session with this little padlock button here in the top left, and I can take control of her machine. And so now we have kind of cooperative control. I can move the mouse and keyboard. I can show her the menu option that I was talking about. And Marie can move the mouse and keyboard as well. So if I wanted her to change Zoom menus, I would go to the view Zoom screen and pick the right option for her and fix her problem, get her out of her situation or help her get where she needs to be. Again, it's a cooperative control. So Marie can also move the mouse and keyboard. We can do things together. We can be talking, we can be chatting. And she hasn't noticed, by the way, that I've got this cooperative control anytime that I'm logged in. And then, as soon as I fix her problem, I can just collapse that session back to a thumbnail. And now I can go look for the next student that needs help. So now maybe Albert would raise his hand and I'd go help Albert and see who needs help next. In fact, Karen, I often use this screen even when I'm teaching on site. So even if I'm in front of students 5 feet away, I keep this up in the side of my monitor so that I can see what students are doing in real time. And I can kind of proactively address problems before they get there. I mean, you know how that goes.
That's right.
Students get into trouble and they get 3 clicks behind you, but then they don't want to raise their hand and embarrass themselves, right?
That's right. That's
so a lot of times it's 10 minutes later that they, finally raise their hand and they're 5 steps back.
Whereas I think it's actually after class, right? They wait till after class to ask their question.
Right. They come back later and say, hey, I missed the whole exercise. But the whole point is I could be watching these in real time then. And so if I see that Marie's going astray or Albert's going astray, I can kind of even say, well, if you're having trouble finding this menu option, maybe look up here. And so I don't have to single anybody out and I can correct problems. So this over-the-shoulder view gives us real-time collaboration with the students, whether they're in the same room or they're 1,000 miles away. And so that's kind of the basics of OrasiLabs. The student has their own lab to work in, and the instructor then can broadcast any instructional material that they need to, and then they can watch the students as the students participate.
Hey, Joe, I had a couple of quick questions since we're talking to, mostly training providers today. The first one is if you could just quickly go back to that student screen.
Yep.
Yes, and I noticed you have the Orasi logo up at the top left of the student page. Of course, we love the Orasi logo, but training consulting providers would probably want their students to see their logo. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we let anybody, all of our customers, customize the experience. So there are options in our administration panels, administration services, where customers can customize the logo and the company name to come out on all of these things. So the portal, for example, will have the company's name and logo rather than ours. The email also comes branded with the company logo, et cetera. So, everywhere that the student sees that information, we replace it with the custom information. That way, training providers can brand it as their own. And it,
That's right.
Doesn't have to look like it's our product.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Joe. And then the second one was, we've talked a lot about, how important it is to have those hands-on environments for the instructor and student. In the slides, I mentioned the concept of the template and that there's a template that these environments are based on. Could you maybe just touch on that briefly, just to kind of take some of the mystery out of what's involved there?
Absolutely. So if I'll go back to the instructor interface, and it would be instructors or administrators that would do this kind of work. In fact, a lot of customers will separate the template definition from the actual instructional responsibilities. So sometimes there's just a small group of people that manage templates, and the instructors then deliver the classes. In OrasiLabs, all of this is controlled in this left-hand nav screen. And so lab templates is one of the other options that we can pop over to. Now, I was teaching in this sample class that you just saw. There was just a single machine, and it had Acrobat Reader installed. So all I did was use this simple lab template wizard. I built a new lab template and walked through a very simple process to create a machine. And then after I created it, I installed Acrobat Reader. That's all there is to creating that template. You can also define much more complex templates as well. And I've got an example here for MySQL that has a lot of different resources that's necessary. And so if I take a look at the details behind this one, It has local resources for the student to use. It has some shared resources like databases and file servers that students might share across the entire class. It even has some custom firewall and port issues defined. So this is a pretty complex template that takes a lot of work to build, whether you're building it on a physical environment or you're building it in OrasiLabs. It's a lot of configuration. The point is that you build all this with just drag and drop options. I just drag across a new machine and fill in the property sheets. And that's all I have to do to create new resources. And then once I save this and I get this set up the way I like it, I build the classes from this. So I only have to do this template design one time, and OrasiLabs then creates all of the resources necessary for each student, for each instructor, and for each class in order to make all of this work, including all the networking rules behind the scenes. So that's kind of what Lab Temps is all about. It's meant to give the customer the ability to dynamically create as complex an environment as they need, and we reproduce it at will, class by class.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping to see. Thanks so much, Joe. So we've taken a look at how OrasiLabs works from the student's perspective, the instructor's perspective, and then Joe showed us a little bit about how those lab templates work. We certainly appreciate you joining us today, and hopefully this helps you to see how OrasiLabs can help accelerate your software application training. Thanks so much.